Lit Show. Check this out.
This is the Lit Show.
Here we go again.
Today we're going to be discussing a topic that has been talked about quite a lot over the last few years, and perhaps with the increasing condition, it has not been talked about enough, and that topic is mental health. So here with us today we have a very special guest, Bronte, and she will be sharing her experience and views on mental health with us today. Bronte, how are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm not too bad, thank you.
Good.
How's work?
Fab.
Fab?
Same as always, yeah.
Yeah, still training?
We always doing it.
Good stuff. Well, thank you for joining us today to speak about an important topic such as mental health.
Yeah.
And today, as I mentioned, you're going to be sharing with us some of your experiences and views on mental health as well. And I wanted to start off just by asking Bronte, what is mental health in your own words? How would you describe mental health?
Everything in your life is going to revolve around your mental health. You could have like your best life, career, everything sorted, relationship, fab. But if you're not right mentally, if there are other things that annoy you, it's just, you're not going to be your optimum health, are you?
Okay, understood. And as you mentioned there, you know, it plays a part in pretty much every part of your life.
Mm-hmm.
And hence why it's important that we discuss this topic today. I'm aware that this topic can be, you know, a complex one, especially when it comes to the causes of mental health. As we know, there are a number of factors to consider, especially, you know, biological and in chemical imbalances, should I say, as well as social environment, etc. But from your own experience or experiences, what are some of the causes of mental health?
It can be anything.
Mm-hmm.
It can be something that you can change really easily. So like your work environment or like your friends.
Yeah.
It can be your home life. It can be your physical health. It can be, really specifically.
Right.
It could just be that's just how you're feeling. That's how your brain is chemically imbalanced. You know.
Okay.
So
Nice.
sometimes there's no reason. Sometimes it's a bunch of different things that are all together.
Right.
And that makes it harder to obviously come out of if there's multiple factors.
Okay. As you said there, one of which could be, biological factors or social, external, environmental factors as well. So as you mentioned, social media could be could lead to mental health as well, and especially in the world that we live in today. I totally agree with you in terms of social media having a big impact on especially on the younger generation as well in terms of mental health. Do you think that there is anything that people can do on social media to avoid perhaps mental health issues or problems? So in terms of like, I know, on social media sometimes we're sort of like thirsty for likes, should we say, and that sort of stuff, and perhaps if you don't get that outcome, or you're looking at somebody else who lives a better life or a much sort of lit life, should we say, in comparison to yours, and that can obviously affect you mentally. But is there anything that people can do from your experience to avoid that?
The way I look at it is I'm only going to post the best things that I do.
Yeah.
Most of the time. Where I run my business around mental health, I don't do it as much, but definitely when I was younger, like I'm not out here posting like a photo I think that I look ugly in, right? So know what you put into putting your content in, everyone else does the exact same.
Right.
Like, yeah, okay, you probably look at this girl's photo and be like, oh, she's so pretty, she took that in like one go. There's probably was like 20 before that she didn't like, and she's probably analysing it and judging herself for it. It's sad, but most of the time that is what it's like on social media.
Right.
So remind yourself the way you post is exactly the way most likely everyone else does. But that's why I try to add in Like
Right.
all of my hoop fails and things, or
Right.
things that are not so pretty, because then that
Yeah.
helps my business as well, because you're just more of a real person than trying to look like some sort of
Okay.
influencer.
So, do you think in that case then, do you think most people on social media, since we're talking about social media as well, kind of use social media as a mechanism to cope with mental health, or perhaps make themselves feel better? In your opinion, what do you think?
I think people do it more in a self-sabotage way.
Right.
So you feel sad, what you want to do, something that's mindless. But you can scroll through Instagram for ages. You can scroll through TikTok for ages. You can scroll through Facebook for ages.
Yeah.
Are you going to come off of that? Have you ever come off of that after looking at a bunch of things that are like, oh, someone else has such a great life? You know what? That made me feel so much better. No.
Right.
It can definitely inspire you if you're looking at things that you want to do, or things that are going to make you feel better, or like looking at a hobby and stuff. If
Yeah.
I scroll through like a bunch of circus things, that's going to make me feel 10 times better than if I'm scrolling through, you know, things that are sad, things that, you know,
Yeah.
maybe I relate to, but they still make me sad. I'm like, oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
You know, some things are really positive,
Yeah.
but then you have to give yourself sort of like a time limit, and then
time
actually
limit.
evaluate on like, how are you feeling?
Yeah.
Because it's so easy to just get consumed in it. And especially with like depression and a lot of mental health issues,
Yeah.
you can find comfort in feeling that.
Right.
So your endless scrolling, that's just basically just validating how you feel. You're like, well, I'm sad, so I'm just going to scroll.
Right.
And now I'm still sad, so
Yeah.
that's fine. But it's like a weird comfort at the same time.
Yeah. And like you mentioned as well, depending on the way you look at things on social media as well, as well as putting a limit on yourself in terms of the, you know, the amount of time we be there scrolling and what we're looking at as well. There is also the dangerous side to it, which is the, you know, the bullying that occurs quite often on social media. So I'm guessing people have to be aware of that as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
People are mean.
Yeah.
I feel like, I don't know. I've not experienced that, so I can't say too much.
Yeah.
Bar seeing it less on Instagram, because I think I'm more on TikTok. But
Yeah.
people are mean on TikTok, man. They just
Yeah.
say things. It'll be like one thing they don't agree with, and they're like, nah, this person's like way out their mind. Like,
Right.
you could be perfectly fine, and then one thing happens, and then it's like, yeah.
Yeah.
But people talk about it all the time.
Right.
Like, people have such an opinion.
Yeah.
And if it's real easy to express that opinion, and if you disagree,
Yeah.
like, someone's going to write it. So
Okay.
you have to be mentally tough for that if you're going to put yourself out there.
Yeah.
And it sucks, because you should be able to do whatever you want. But I don't know. I don't trust people.
Yeah. No, I completely understand. And obviously, in your experience, how did you know you were, you know, sort of going through a mental health process or suffering from mental health? What kind of triggered that made you think, oh, actually, something isn't quite right here?
I mean, it was a while ago, so I can't tell you specifically on like a pinpoint time where I knew.
Of course.
I think it was just gradual. But I guess the point, I can tell you when the point I asked for help.
Yeah.
So I had the most anxious day ever,
Right.
and I went round to my aunt's house, and she got so mad that I was so unsociable.
Right.
Literally. It was, she shouldn't have done that, but what it is. And she's just out here being like, why is she not talking? Why is she not interacting? And I was just there like anxious as hell. Like,
Yeah.
I can't even speak, I can't even do anything. And then I was like, you know what? If I can't even interact with my family who I'm meant to be comfortable around in a scenario that I've had 1,000 times before, this time just felt different. And I was like, you know what? Maybe we've got a slight anxiety issue there.
Right. Okay. So again, that just emphasizes of the importance of discussing this topic again.
Yeah.
Which, as I mentioned at the start, it is a topic that is often talked about, but still to some extent is not talked about enough.
Yeah.
So in terms of mental health, there seems to be sort of like a stigma around that mental health, people look at it in different ways for what it is. Like you said, your auntie had a slight different reaction to what you've expected or would have liked, perhaps. Do you think, with discussions like this and creating more awareness, perhaps somebody in your situation may have a better response from their family members or friends and families in general if we, as a society, create more awareness and educate people on mental health?
Yeah, for sure. I think it's a hard thing to understand if you haven't been through it.
Right.
And the more people who do experience it, that's, I think, why it's making it easier to talk about.
Right.
But if you have never experienced depression, you've never experienced anxiety, never had a panic attack, and someone's having that right in front of you,
right,
it is going to be like, well, what? Like, really? Because
yeah,
you can't put yourself in those shoes. But at the same time, you can try explain
right,
as best as you can. I'm not out here saying that everyone needs to have a mental health issue
right,
so that everyone understands. But I think the more you talk about it and the more people who have the issues talk about it, it's going to become more relevant in most people's lives.
right.
So the people that don't experience it, it's not just one person they pinpoint on. It's probably going to be like maybe a few people in their life. Because sadly, that's the reality.
Right.
Everyone's got at least a few people in their life who are going to struggle.
Yeah.
Unless you have absolutely no one in your life, then.
Yeah. No.
You're
completely
going to come
agree.
across people with it.
Yeah.
And it's the understanding that people are not going to get it. But if you talk about it, at least they have a tiny bit more to go off of. Than having never spoken about it before or ever it even like coming into their mind, if that makes sense.
Yeah. It's interesting you mentioned that because I was looking at some data not too long ago in regards to the impact that COVID has had. And since COVID, the increase of mental health, which has been a clear issue. I mean, even not just in the UK, but globally as well. I mean, in America, I think studies have shown that the whole country was now 20% of the country, should I say, had people with mental health or dealing with mental health issues as well. And then in the UK, we've got a population of 67 million. And at least 4 million people out of 67 are suffering from mental health illness or condition, should we say, again, which highlights the growing concern in regards to mental health. Now, there are studies that also show that there has been an increase in terms of mental health amongst men as well. But like I said, there seems to be a stigma around mental health, particularly when it comes to men as well. But they still find it hard to speak or to seek for help. Why do you think that may be in regards to men finding it difficult to kind of open up to their friends and families? In your opinion, of course.
I mean, I don't 100% know. I think it's probably getting a lot easier.
Right.
I guess you could say the typical, like, what people would go off of, like a stereotype, like, I need to be strong, I don't struggle with this sort of thing.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that you can't have a mental health issue, because the daily factors in life of what you go through are not going to differ all that much from like a female to a male.
Right.
Like your life challenges are going to be somewhat similar in the aspect of like, a man could equally have a job that he hates as a woman could, or you could be in a terrible relationship that really kind of messes you up for a while.
Right.
It can be either end on that one. But I think it's easier for them if they're not used to communicating their emotions just in general.
Right.
To not want to communicate that or say that they're struggling because maybe
Mm-hmm.
maybe their guy friends don't get it, or maybe
Right.
they don't have someone in their life that has experienced it before,
Mm-hmm.
or maybe their social media looks really different. Because I
Right.
don't know what a man's social media looks like, but
Yeah.
I got a bunch of soppy, sad quotes coming up all the time, and I don't know, I can't picture
Yeah.
the whole like relatable, like, you know, like girly relatable things that come
Right.
up. Maybe that's just not the case on men's Instagram. Sometimes it's nice to read that because you're like, okay, I'm not alone.
Right.
But
Understand.
maybe that's not the same. Maybe it's what you surround yourself with.
Right.
But yeah, I think more people are talking about it.
Yeah.
I would hope people that are younger than me and my age and,
Yeah.
you know, growing up in this sort of way that everything is really difficult.
Yeah.
And if you don't have anxiety about your future, then
Mm-hmm.
you're probably real chill person. Because I was still really stressing, and now
Yeah.
everything costs a lot more. I'd be real stressing.
Yeah.
So I don't know how you couldn't talk about that.
Yeah.
So I hope people start to.
Again, that's another interesting point you've touched up on there with the recent crisis in terms of things becoming a bit more pricey. That's had an impact. It certainly has had an impact on me as well. And I'm aware, you know, colleagues and friends, families, we all talk about it. So again, the current economic climate doesn't help. So another reason to create more awareness and kind of find solutions to tackle mental health, because like you said, you know, not everyone is open to speak about it. And I know I mentioned men earlier, but it applies to women as well, as you said. And from my experience as well, I can mention that, you know, having a African background, certainly in Africa, most people don't believe in mental health. So if you try to open up, that's just non-existent in there. So, you know, you'll get people laughing at you or saying, what are you talking about? You know, you're just sort of supposed to deal with the stress, with the problems the way they are. It's almost like it is what it is type of attitude.
Just put a Band-Aid on it.
And then again, but I believe that's again lack of awareness, lack of education in regards to mental health. Hence why it's important for more people to carry on speaking about it in order to tackle these problems. And, you know, you never know what someone's going through. Like a bit we were speaking about the social media side of things, where, you know, you might post a happy selfie when really that's not how you're feeling. You know, I've spoken to friends of mine before, even a couple of years ago. There was a young lady who I went to college with, and I was sort of like on my lunch break outside of work, and I bumped into her, and, you know, she seemed really happy and everything. Said, so how's life going? And she was, you know, bubbly and everything and seemed really enthusiastic. And 2 days later, I heard that she committed suicide. So, you know, that kind of actually made me think and look into mental health a little bit more and try and understand what is happening, because, you know, if you're not educated and you don't, you know, there isn't enough awareness being created out there, you know, it can kind of just go by. All these status that I've been seeing lately, perhaps you might have seen it as well, of friends saying check up on friends and family, mental health is a real thing, which is positive, but obviously we're trying to get to the point where it's not too late for some people, because unfortunately that seems to be the case most times.
This is The Lit Show.
Here we go again.
Yes, ladies and gents, we are now back from our break and continue this important topic. And my next question prior to the break, Bronte, was going to be in terms of coping mechanisms. So how do you, or did you cope or deal with mental health?
I probably wouldn't use this advice for everyone.
Right.
But I changed as many things in my life as I could over years, really. Like, if I thought I'd really like a job, I went into the job, I didn't like it, just leave. And I know that's so easy to say.
Right.
And money is obviously a big thing with that as well. Constantly look for other things. If you're comfortable but you're not happy, you can be comfortable somewhere else.
Right.
And there will be other places. There are always other people. I have had literally so many jobs. Some of them I've stayed in for ages that I've absolutely hated. Your job is such a big part of your life if you are there a certain amount of time every single day.
Yeah.
5 days a week or 6 days a week if you're me. So that's going to play a huge factor. If there are friends in your life that you've maybe had for ages, I'm not saying like cut all your friends off if they're not making you happy.
Right.
But people do grow. Experience new things.
Yeah.
Experience new people. Because I did not know 50% of the people in my life this time last year that I know now. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I feel like that makes sense. But I met so many more new people. Learn new things, because I think it's real easy to think your life is in a little bubble.
Right.
And that's all you have.
Yeah.
When you could change literally one thing and it can improve it.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's always going to improve it.
Right.
I'm not saying it's going to fix everything, but it might make things a little bit easier. If your issues are environmental,
right.
If you are struggling with, like, everyone says go exercise.
Right.
Or like go to the gym or something.
Yeah.
And obviously as a PT, I'm like, yeah, that's really good. But
yeah,
I will never just say, just go to the gym. Go find an actual hobby that is active, but that is fun. It doesn't have to be something that's going to make you lose loads amount of weight, or you have to do it like 5 times a week. Little things that you want to do for yourself.
Right.
And sometimes you just need a little bit of accountability.
Right.
On like pushing yourself to do those things. So I feel like most of the time that I've decided to do something new is in those little sporadic times where I'm like, you know what, I'm going to make things better. You have to book it in those times. Don't think about it.
Yeah.
And then eventually when it gets there, it'll be like probably terrifying. And, when I made the move out of my hometown, I tried not to think about it, but I thought about it all the time. And I was like, it's a terrible decision, but I've got to do something. Otherwise, you will just stay the same.
Stay the same.
And you either stay the same somewhere else, but at least maybe you feel a little bit better for trying.
Right, for trying something different.
Yeah.
Perhaps.
Just change as many things as you can.
Right.
I'm not saying like they have to be huge things, but if you feel like you're stuck, or that everything is in like a little bubble and you feel consumed, it's got to be little baby steps.
Right. Okay. And you spoke about changing things or your environment as well, including jobs. Speaking of jobs, how many jobs have you got at the moment?
3 main jobs.
3 main jobs?
3 main jobs. I'm not there every day.
Right.
The bar I'm obviously at 6 days a week. I PT 3 days a week.
Right.
And then I teach kids circus 1 time a week.
Okay. What made you want to get into personal training?
Honestly, it was it was one of the most impulsive decisions I've ever made.
Yeah.
With each job I've had, more so when I was younger, it was like just a case of like, I might like that. So I had that without ever being in a gym, about a gym. I was like, I want to work in a gym. So I started working in a gym. To be fair, I actually hated it.
Really?
Yeah, because I was doing memberships and it was like a 45-minute process. And the gym I work at now, you can just like do it in like 5 minutes on your phone. So I really, no offense to that gym, but I don't know why it was such a long process. But it had a women's only gym in there. And so I had a lot of people come in and tell me how anxious they felt.
Okay.
And they wanted to just go to this women's only gym, which had like maybe a quarter of the equipment that the big gym had.
Right.
And I was like, you know what? I can do this.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm going to be a PT. I'd literally probably been in the gym like 3 times if you take out the tours that I did. And then so I did that. And then I slowly actually learned what I was talking about.
Yeah.
And then when we came out of COVID, I was like, you know what, I'm going to do it. It was the most
Give it a
terrifying
go.
thing, because I was like, do I actually know what I'm doing? Because the course isn't incredibly helpful.
Right.
But yeah, I now
Okay.
forget the question that you actually initially asked me.
Would you say in terms of your job, which you've already answered,
Yeah.
you kind of just expanded on your PT
I'm just answering the questions before you ask them.
side of things. Yeah, ahead of the game. So, in terms of the PT side of things, do you feel that it helped you in some way in terms of your mental health? Being able to perhaps help others achieve certain goals of theirs, whether that's to lose weight or gain weight or feel better about themselves mentally. Has that contributed to your well-being as well? Do you feel your job
Yeah.
has in terms of PT?
For sure. I think because probably a huge thing with depression
Right.
is not feeling like you have a purpose, or like, what the hell am I doing here?
Yeah.
And I'm not saying it happens all the time in PT, because sometimes I see clients for months
Right.
and it's not a reflection on them, it's more of a reflection on me, because
Right.
you can doubt yourself a million times, but maybe one time you don't.
Yeah.
But like when people thank you or something, you're like, oh my God, they actually did that, and like I did that, and like,
Yeah.
that's pretty cool.
Right.
So that gives me more of a purpose.
Yeah.
I feel like my career little path,
Nice.
maybe.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very good. Very good. And in terms of passion, have you got any passion or had any growing up? Anything that you really enjoy doing in terms of hobbies?
I mean,
or
like everything.
everything.
I did like so much.
Yeah.
I played football at one point.
Really?
Yeah, I think it was for like a month.
Oh wow.
But
Yeah.
you know,
I saw
yeah.
you when we were on the way to the studio. You mentioned the hoop or something like that.
The hoop. Well, I started that not growing up. I mean, I was
Right.
19.
Okay. And
So-
what was that? Just so people can sort of get an idea of what
my
we're
circus.
talking. Oh, circus. Yeah.
What do you mean? Hoop
Yeah.
is circus?
Yeah, that's what I was referring to.
I was like, is there another hoop I'm on about? Is it the
No.
basketball in the back of my
No.
car that's severely deflated?
No, not that. Yeah. So the circus, is
Yeah.
that something you're still doing now, or
Yes.
you did? And-
Yeah. So I guess that was my way of training
Mhm.
with an end goal, if that
Right.
makes sense. I find it really difficult with my ADHD to just lift weights consistently.
Right.
And like, yeah, my body will change and yeah, I'll be stronger. But at what point is there like the end goal? Like,
Right.
am I going to be chest pressing the 40s? You
Right.
know, and then what? And then what? So it's like little performance-based goals
Right.
rather than having just being like, oh, I'm going to be somewhere. Like,
Yeah.
so my next goal is to get my next performing gig. And
Right.
that's just little short-term, well, probably long-term, it feels like now at this point.
Right.
But we'll
okay.
get there. Or like the courses that I've done. So it's like, okay, well, I don't have to think too far in the future because I know I'm doing this for a certain amount of time. So when I did
Right.
my 3 months, I was like, I know exactly what I'm doing for these 3 months. I tried not to
Yeah.
stress about what would happen after. And then just, yeah, short-term
Yeah.
goals.
Okay. And when it comes to obviously mental health, you've shared some of your experiences and views as well. Again, in your opinion or from your knowledge and experience, what else do you think we could do as a society to help tackle mental health?
I think talk about it before it's an issue.
Oh, right. Okay.
So
Can you expand on that?
So I think maybe people learn about it themselves,
Right.
having maybe just being in the thick of it.
Right.
So
okay.
it's like, oh, it's not so bad, not so bad. And then maybe one day they realize actually, no, this is actually drowning me.
Right.
I think you should treat it as much as you do physical. So
Right.
say as you grow up, you learn about different physical conditions. Teach it to people before
Right.
it's an issue. Learn how to deal with stress from a young age. Because you start off, like, going through GCSEs as it is
Right.
so stressful. And what prep do they really give kids?
Yeah.
And then I know my transition from school to college, I had literally no idea what was going on about. I was so stressed out. They would just like choose some things.
Yeah.
And then you stress about your future. I chose things that were basically irrelevant to me
Right.
because I had no idea what to choose. But
Yeah.
if you can manage those little stresses, and probably, you know, adults would look at that and be like, oh, you know, that's how my life was fine, think about, but it's different now.
Yeah.
You actually have to really think about how you're going to make money
Yeah.
and how you have to, you know, if you want to have a life, you have to make
Yeah.
more than maybe ever before
Right.
and not just scrape by.
Yeah.
And that is really hard to do, trust me.
Yeah.
So I think there's going to be more pressure going into that, being like, how am I ever going to afford anything? Because I think now, like, how am I ever going to afford a house?
Yeah.
So if I was going back and being like, okay, that wasn't my struggle when I was growing up.
Yeah.
But if you can learn to deal with the stresses and like manage your little goals and things, then maybe it doesn't seem so overwhelming. Because I feel like you kind of have to think that you're planning out your entire life at that age.
Right.
And you definitely don't.
Right.
So if you asked me if I was going to be doing this a few years ago, I'd be like, no.
No.
I probably would have said I would have been famous, delusionally.
Yeah.
But, you know.
Yeah. Okay. No, I completely understand. So basically, you know, you're kind of recommended or suggesting that it could be or should be implemented in schools, perhaps. As well, so that, you know, the kids kind of grow up with
Stress class.
Right.
Anxiety class.
Right.
How to get through, you know, when you're a kid, maybe you don't relate so much to your parents, right? Because I definitely didn't.
Right.
I don't think they would have been my go-to. My friends would have been my go-to.
Right. Okay.
But why not talk about it? Why not be like, okay, if you do start feeling this way, already have, like, this is what you do. Instead of being like, no, it's fine, because you'll just shove it down and be like, okay, well, no one else feels like this.
Right.
But if you know that it could potentially happen, which sounds really savage.
Yeah.
But, like, let's be real. A lot of people are going to struggle.
Yeah.
And that's just the sad reality of it.
Yeah.
Then they already kind of know what to do before it gets worse.
Yeah. You mentioned parents there, which obviously they play a vital role within, you know, their children's mental health, as well as theirs as well. Just to add on, I think, you know, if I had to recommend or suggest anything, is that perhaps these parents or the parents would also attend these classes as well. How would that be done? I'm not quite sure.
Basically, just everyone have group therapy.
Everyone being involved, because a lot of the times you'll find that, you know, your parents will treat you the same way that they were treated. So again, if they don't have the knowledge or the education on mental health, how can they teach their kids? Yeah. And then obviously, as you know, it's like a domino effect. It goes affecting and passing through families. So I think, as an addition to what you mentioned, perhaps the parents also being involved and knowing how to obviously communicate with their children. So that would also be a great suggestion. Okay. Yeah. Well, Bronte, it's been a pleasure having you on the Lit Show.
Thank you.
You are now certified lit. I know there were various topics that we could have touched up on and talked about in terms of entertainment. As you know, we're quite a versatile podcast. But thank you for choosing to speak about something that's very important. And thank you for all the input. I really appreciate it.
That's okay. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, you're welcome. You know the vibes.
Check this out.
This is The Lit Show.